Very pleased not to be joined here at Blogging the Boys by the one and only, the dashing, the debonair, the biggest Captain America fan that you know, apparently. From Covers.com, it is Jason Logan. Jason, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thanks so much. How do you know I'm a Captain America fan?
Well, this is on YouTube, obviously, and I'd say this very humbly because I get a lot of compliments on my office background. I'm very fortunate to have done some very cool things. You are maybe the only person that's ever kind of been able to go shot for shot with me relative to office backgrounds, and you've got some Marvel themed things, and I saw the Iron Man helmet. So the Captain America thing was really me just like kind of zigging where you zag. See, that was not in frame. That was purely
I got no place to put it, but this one's pretty badass. So
yeah, that's pretty sick. Okay. Well, I also couldn't see because you were standing in the way, the Philadelphia Eagles helmet at the bottom. So this really did kind of zig where I was intending to zag.
Did you say, the Philly helmet there? So a lot of that has to do with, so I do regular TV spots with a bunch of different television stations, and one of them is in Philadelphia. So I usually use it as a garbage bin when it's not on TV.
Good for you. Yeah.
And but I can't knock the Eagles, man. They're great roster and a great football team right now.
We were chatting right before we started recording. You are a Cowboys fan, and I think that I speak for all of us in saying that I really am. I'm not that upset. I covered the Super Bowl. I was there in New Orleans, and I've been to 2 Super Bowls now in my life. And having seen the Eagles win, it one of the 2 times, like I'm really not as upset as I thought I would be, and that bothers me. Like I'm so beaten down that the Eagles winning the Super Bowl sort of unfazes me, and that bothers, if that makes sense. Like I'm more mad at the Cowboys than I am the Eagles.
I will say 20 years of working at Covers.com and betting on sports has really dulled my fandom.
Sure.
So like while I did like Kansas City in that game, almost all of my props were very pro Eagles. Smith had a massive game and he made me a lot of money in that one. And I'll say that the more the Cowboys suck and the more I get entrenched into the sports betting side of things, my fandom has died a slow death over 20 years. That's not to say that I don't get into the games and get optimistic about things, but you hope that a championship from a team like the Eagles serves as a wake-up call for Jerry Jones and this organization. And I don't know if the alarm clock is going off. So
yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I've been doing this professionally now for about a decade, and there is a kind of callus that develops just kind of, whatever happens. I'm a big golf fan. I was going to squeeze in some Masters questions at the end. I didn't prep you for that. And I just no longer root for the Cowboys in the way that I root for Rory to win the Masters. You know what I mean? Like there's a different kind of innocence that's still at play for things like that. So it's good to know that we're just like these 2 jaded jerks. You know what I mean? They don't really care about things anymore.
Yeah. It's been beaten out of us. So, but that's not to say, like people always ask, "Oh, you're betting against your Cowboys." I'll probably bet against them as much as I bet on them.
What then? That's a good segue to kind of get into the Cowboys, because last year obviously was left-footed from the very beginning, and there were so many people who said this and said that, and I'm not here to relitigate that, but whenever I would get asked questions about kind of win totals or things like that, I always sort of leaned over. I believe last year, I don't know if you have that data, kind of consensus was about 9.5. And I thought, look, that's easy. Like, I mean, this is a team that at the time obviously was coming off of 3 straight 12-win seasons. Obviously, nobody could anticipate the Dak injury, which significantly affected everything. But that being said, this is a team that really rarely bottoms out and rarely, falls well below projections, which is why I think they're a safe bet for something really general, like an over-under on win total specifically.
Yeah, I went under the win total last year, just kind of knowing that the way the roster was put together and a lot of the expectations were much higher than I was going to give them credit for. We knew that, the Eagles were going to be back in full force. We didn't know quite then that Jayden Daniels was going to be as good as he was. But for me, the big thing that turned me off last year was the coaching shuffle and hanging on to Mike McCarthy and watching Dan Quinn go to Washington. And in my eyes, Dan Quinn should have been the guy that was there and should have got the head coaching job for the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, the defense was, at that time, the defense was one of the more dangerous defenses out there. The pass rush was humming. They were ball hawking. They were making game-changing plays. And while they would get burned a lot, they made game-changing plays, and that kept them in ball games. And Quinn was such a great guy in the locker room and so beloved. And I think he was someone that you could have put into a head coach position, could run the defense, and Then you bring in someone that can run the offensive side of things. And when they let him walk and they stuck with McCarthy, I knew it was a mistake. And I luckily was taking the under on their season win total last year. Now it's 7.5. They're kind of projecting like, is it going to be the same as last year? 7-10 finish. The under 7.5 is padded pretty heavily. It's -120, -130. So bookmakers are expecting the Cowboys to finish with 7 or fewer wins, and that is with Dak healthy, and that is looking at this current roster of things. And I'm still looking at it and saying, like, this division is significantly better than it was last year. Even the Giants with their, with the two-headed monster of Russ and Jameis Winston, it's better. And they're going to draft well too. So.
Yeah, and obviously we're chatting 2 weeks before the NFL draft, and that will impact these things to some degree. I know that what I'm about to say is going to sound like the version of me that roots for Roy to win the Masters, these like rose-colored glasses as a Cowboys fan, but they do so rarely bottom out. You mentioned with Dak healthy. In terms of, there was a stat that I used to say early in my career that I had just sort of uncovered and loved and kind of coped with. And it was that Tony Romo never played in a game where he was mathematically eliminated from playoff contention. It's a really meaningless thing, but it was, in the trenches of arguing in his name, it was a really valuable sort of commodity. And so that to me is representative of like the, being 8-8 at worst, right? And that's where, like, I have a really difficult time. I almost scoff at 7.5, like at taking the under, just because I can't imagine that. I mean, even the worst full Dak Prescott seasons are not that bad for the Cowboys. To your point, a lot has changed within the division, around the scope of the NFL, and you can't just be the same way forever. But I would personally be stunned if Dak played all 17 games and they won no more than 7.
I look at that schedule, and it's just, I know the full schedule isn't out yet, but like we've got
the opponents are right, to your point.
Yeah. So like if you look at the home schedule, they have the Giants. Okay, they can beat them. They have the Eagles at home. That's a loss. You have the Commanders at home. Call that a half.
I think they'll split the series with Washington. They'll probably sweep.
Quite honestly, if they're lucky, because the Commanders are going to be much.
Say improved. They get 3. They get 3 within the division.
Yeah.
They
Packers a loss. You got the Chiefs at home. That's a loss. Chargers at home. I want to say that's a loss. The Vikings could easily be a loss. A lot depends on JJ McCarthy, but the roster is great around him. They should beat the Cardinals at home. The tricky thing comes when they play their road schedule, because a lot of the teams that they should beat are improved teams on the up and up that you're playing on the road. So you have the Bears, expected to be improved, new head coach. They bolstered that offensive line. Caleb Williams going to be another year. I don't know if that's a win. You've got the Raiders, new head coach. The up and up, you're on the road.
Well, and maybe a new quarterback. Like, again, the draft impacts a lot of this.
The QB situation is much better there. Even the Jets, you're going and playing the Jets. They have Fields. That roster looks good. And that was the thing last year, is like the roster looks good, and then Aaron Rodgers just didn't really perform up to standards. And then the Panthers, I think, are going to be improved as well too. And that's not a gimme on the road. Like, there's the games that you should be able to put a W to them are like, I'm not quite sure. And I can absolutely see why the markets are padded to the under 7.5 in this one. And then, like you said, if Dak is healthy the entire season, that's only happened once in the last 4 years.
Yeah, well, and now I really didn't mean to just be like the coper. That was not my intention here today, because I mean, everybody who was watching knows, like, I will crap on this team at any opportunity. While he hasn't played a full season, he's only done it once in the last 5 years. He played 16 games in 2021, right? Like, if we're being super technical, you can say whatever.
Yeah. We won't count the end of season sit-outs and stuff like that.
To that point, though, I don't know if you have historical win total projections at the beginning of seasons and whatnot.
I don't have them on hand, but there's something.
Right. But I imagine, because this is somewhat reflective of coming off of the season that they're coming off of. And in 2020, they had, Dak got hurt again, and that was the ankle injury. That was kind of the beginning of this injury half decade now that we're sort of living in.
Sure.
And then they came out and won 12 games in 2021. And so again, and that was my whole perspective or standpoint in 2021 was, look, Dak missed the entire season. There's a lot of data there, and there's a lot of regression to the mean in a positive sense that's going to happen to this team in 21, which we saw. I mean, in terms of volume of wins, and that's why 12 would obviously very easily hit the over in this particular case. And so I do think, and I guess this is a bigger question and not really a quantifiable one, but you're a Cowboys fan. You've been working at Covers for 20 years. In your experience, how does the Cowboys of it all impact whatever any particular line is? Because there isn't an innate, they're the Cowboys, whatever, and people just kind of jump at them in different ways than they would like the Jaguars. And so that can, I imagine, make manipulating things to your advantage easier, but potentially more difficult as well.
We call that the Yankee tax.
Right. Great way to put it.
Because the Yankees are much like the Cowboys, much like the Lakers. You're always going to see a little bit of padding there. I will say the shine has come off of the Dallas Cowboys in the last few years. But there was a time in which you knew if the Cowboys were playing on Monday Night Football and you were waiting for that half-point hook to show up and maybe bet against them, knowing that the market could sway that way. If you were sitting on, say they were playing the Eagles at home on Monday Night Football and the Eagles are +3 and you really want +3.5, we're going to wait until the public comes in, 2 hours before the game, and we're going to see if with that 3.5 shows up on the Eagles and buyback. So there's definitely opportunities as a sports bettor to go against that. But I will say that over the last few years, it's not been as prominent.
That makes sense. I mean, just because they've, you said it well, the shine is more. I mean, the Yankees, to your point, the Lakers won. I mean, depending on how you view it, but they did.
Yeah, I mean, the Golden State Warriors are always going to get the benefit of the doubt from the betting public. The Kansas City Chiefs, we're seeing that too. Like the Chiefs line movement over the last, since Mahomes went on his run there, you're always seeing lines move towards Kansas City, and you're always seeing like about a half-point adjustment. And that doesn't seem like a lot when we're talking, half point, but that's a big thing when it comes to betting. And when you're constantly getting the best of the number, you're going to get yourself in a position to win more bets than you lose.
Yeah, and if history works to your benefit, so gambling. I live in Texas. Gambling isn't legal in Texas, but I can do things like underdog fantasy or prize picks or whatever. Yep. And so, like, I almost every day now that baseball season's here, I'm like, I will take more on Shohei Ohtani, on Aaron Judge, and it will miss, some days, but like it will hit more often than not. Like if you're just, playing the odds, no pun intended in this overall conversation, like it will work out for you. And to that point, it will work out for you relative to the Cowboys tax or whatever the case may be. But that's why I think the 7.5, that's a little bit of like, I hate to call it Cowboys bias. I promise I did not come here and want to defend them or anything like that. But that's just really, really, really low. They are, again, for who they have tended to be. But I guess because you're pretty confident in that, what is the over under the win total that you like the most across the NFL this season?
Across the NFL,
yeah, just to give us kind of a baseline here.
Oh boy, I'd have to pull them up in front of me here, but I know like a few teams that I think can be improved this year.
It can be the under also as well. Like you can like something you're supremely confident in.
Like I said, we talked before we went on here. I don't dive into it too much right now.
Sure.
Once the free agent and the draft and all this sort of thing.
Let's put it in perspective.
But I think people are going to be a little timid on Minnesota because of the JJ McCarthy situation. Sure. But I think Minnesota, McCarthy was able to, while he wasn't able to play, he was kind of able to like redshirt the season, right? And really kind of see what goes on behind the scenes to get it done. Now he's got to get up to game speed and he's got to stay healthy and have a really good camp. But I think Minnesota, with the players they have around him, and as good as that roster is, I think Minnesota is a team that I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to be another right back into the hunt. Sam Darnold, I was a big Sam Darnold fan going into it last year, and he played very well. But I think a lot of that was the roster really lifted him up, and that's one team that I kind of have my eyes on. As far as a team dropping back, I think Seattle. I think Seattle's going to be in really rough shape.
That's ironic, just because you were a year ago in on Sam Darnold, and that's the horse that they've kind of hitched their wagon to. But it just kind of speaks to circumstances and variables, and things happen and things change. And again, the game that you're playing is, so to speak, is funny because you can make, we're sitting here and like, well, the Cowboys share a division with the Eagles. They just won the Super Bowl, blah, blah. And the, Commanders are going to be really good, whatever. So, well, the Vikings play in the division with the Lions, and with the Bears, we think are going to be better and whatever. So some of that is just, again, it's a matter of circumstance, and it's a matter of, what is the win total? What number can I get? Where can I come in north of 7.5, 8.5? I don't know what it is for the Vikings under JJ McCarthy. And I would imagine that actually what it is reflective of whether or not JJ is going to play this season, or if the Aaron Rodgers thing is still going to pop up, whatever. That's what makes.
I couldn't see them taking a flyer. I think JJ McCarthy has to be their guy.
Right.
I think maybe the only way we kind of see Aaron Rodgers get back into the mix of things is someone loses their starter in week 1, week 2. And then they've got to go out and bring Aaron Rodgers, off the couch or out of the silent retreat or wherever he's,
right.
doing Ochoa. That sort of thing. That's the only way I would see him back in. I'm just pulling up some of the season win totals here for Minnesota. Minnesota is at 8.5. Now the over is padded pretty heavily, 8.5 minus 125. So, I mean, that there is a vote of confidence there in McCarthy coming in as, what he is, a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, effectively. Sure. Yeah. No, that's amazing how you can feel, not you specifically, but, because I'm with you. I feel very confident over 8.5 for Minnesota. And I still feel confident in Dallas over 7.5, but I feel more tentative about it. It's just, it's interesting the way dynamics work. We've talked a lot just based off of the projected win total for the Cowboys. And so, historically, just kind of top of head, where have you found as a better the most success with the Cowboys specifically? Again, just in a general kind of sense, like you've leaned into Dak Prescott's passing, volume, or you've leaned into the under on this or that, just something for people to kind of stay sharp with as the season gets closer, because these things do move and fluctuate, not just after the draft, but as we get deeper into the summer and obviously when the season comes around. What's something that is maybe a kind of your corner of the earth that nobody really knows about that you're prepared to invite more people towards?
In terms of betting the Cowboys?
Yeah. Like maybe it's Eagles games or something, like something that you're sharper on than the average consensus, so to speak. I know it's a strange question.
Yeah, the Cowboys always have a very unique schedule because they get a lot of primetime games. I will say that. So we always see them on Thursday Night Football. We always see them on Monday Night Football. They've got that Thanksgiving game that always pops up. And there's always going to be a schedule spot. And I really like situational wagering where you can take into account, this is their third road game in 4 weeks and their back-to-back road game, or this is like they're playing 3 games in basically, 14 days. Like you'll get those situations where things are getting crammed up. So the Cowboys always offer a lot of situational angles, whether it's beneficial for them or not. Maybe they get that little mini bye after playing on a Thursday and they can get right before a home game and the other team has to travel. And maybe that home team the visiting team's traveling on a short week. So there's always situational spots for them. And then they always do find themselves in a kind of some compacted schedules towards the Thanksgiving schedule. So I will say, as the schedule, once the schedule finally comes out, what I start to do is I comb the entire thing and I start picking out whether it's letdown spots, schedule spots, look ahead spots where you may have that Carolina game. They might have to go to Carolina on a short week with the Eagles at home next week. Right. Not only is it a schedule squeeze, but it's also a look ahead spot to the Eagles game and playing a Panthers team that I think is going to be improved. So, so the Cowboys offer a lot more situational angles, whether it's good or bad, than most teams because of the primetime appeal.
Yeah, that's really interesting because that makes sense. And it is something that I think on one hand you wash away because you're like, well, it really isn't that big of a deal. But then there is a human element to just life. I mean, I think about that. I mentioned Ohtani in baseball. Like, I'm a Houston Astros fan, and they just played last night. We're chatting on Tuesday, but their first game in Seattle after being in Minnesota for a 3-game series that lasted 4 days. And so it makes sense to maybe for the third game of the Seattle series be like, well, they've been out of town for a week. You know what I mean? Like, let's hit the unders on these things because they're just kind of ready to get out of Dodge.
I will say when it comes to extended road trips like that, and this can work in football too. It works
Maybe for
really well in
like a
baseball.
London, or teams that like go to the West Coast from the East Coast and they stay there for like a 2 week stretch, something like that.
There's some teams that have a tough problem with it. I like it. I like it when teams like tend to stay on the West Coast. Like you have
Okay.
an East Coast team, and it's like, well, we're playing Monday, and then we
Yeah,
got
yeah,
this
and
game,
then
and
they
they just like
stay
we're
for
going to
they're
stay out
playing like
there.
Arizona and then San Francisco, and they just
But
stay.
I will say one spot that you can look at, and it does work in baseball too, and it works in football, is where you have teams on an extended an extended away trip or road trip, where they've been away for like the last, like they're playing. Sometimes they play 3 straight road games in football now. The baseball games where it's extended, it's the first game back home, because you've
Mm,
been away for so long, and a lot of these guys have, they have side businesses, they have guys that they have to look after, they have their agents, they're getting, tied into a
their
bunch of different
families
things.
too, like they're getting
The
home,
family,
daycare, pickup.
maybe
Yeah,
the side chick is there too. It's when they get back home and all of life comes at them, and it's that first home game back that you're hesitant to jump into, because of all the distractions that come with it. So it's just, I just got home, I got to play tomorrow, I got everyone coming at me at once. People need tickets, my family needs this, my kid's birthday's coming at me, my agent wants me to do this car
yeah.
commercial. All of it's getting thrown at them. So it's that first home game back that I always try to look
That
at.
is really interesting because I think that the natural assumption would be, I know we're talking Cowboys, but like
Yeah.
you're right. This is applicable.
Mhm.
So basically your first home game, whatever sport it may be, after being gone an inordinate amount of time, which
Yep.
is applicable to if you do the double up East Coast or West Coast stay like they
Yep.
do in football. Because you're right. It's not even. It's like, oh, I got to call, and file my insurance claim or what. I just got a million things to do that I just got to be at home for. And
Mhm.
so that first, man, the Astros are back home this week. I might,
And these guys are businesses in their own now, right? Like
right.
it's not just a bunch of guys just going out and playing baseball. These guys are brands and businesses in their own. So there's so much happening around them now, other than baseball, that when when you get to get away for a few weeks, and it's kind of nice, and then you come home and that reality comes crashing down.
That is a really interesting. That was really what I wanted. Was
That
that
is
like,
that is an old school handicapping.
yeah,
So Dave Malinsky, um, he was an old, like one of an old school Vegas handicapper. And when I first started with Covers, Dave was a handicapper that we talked to and stuff like that. And I would call Dave for an insight on a game, for an article or something I was writing. And then I would talk to him for like 2 hours about whatever else. But he just had so many of these little things that don't show up in box scores, aren't accounted for necessarily. And they're always things that I tend to keep in mind when I'm betting on whatever sport it is.
that is so cool. And man, like I wish I would have thought about this or known this like a week ago. I think about, I don't know how well you follow baseball, but like the Cubs, went to like Tokyo, and
Mm.
then they went to Arizona, and then they went
Hmm.
to Sacramento to play the Athletics. So they had their opening day last week, but it was their first game after like 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
And so there was, to your point, like an enormous amount of like, we got all this stuff happening,
Yep.
and you're dealing with the like opening day like media interviews and stuff. Like
Yeah.
it's a lot more than usual. Wow, that is really sharp. Okay, last Cowboys one, and then I have 3 off the beaten path ones.
Sure.
And it doesn't, you don't have to have a numerical quantity to it, but the kind of thing you're most confident in for the Cowboys this year. And again, maybe it's like, I know that when this comes out, I will probably lean over, I'll probably lean under, just
Yeah.
based on my mood, my vibe at this point in time.
I gotta go with any CD Lamb props right now, I guess, going over. I mean, it's him and Dak, and it was
Right.
kind of very much like that last year. I do expect them to at least make a move to get another number 2 receiver, whether that is a rookie receiver out of the draft, or maybe they do go after like a Tyler Lockett or someone like that can bring in with a little bit of speed and change it up. But I think it's still very much Dak and CD. And CD is that, he's proven that even in a receiving core where we had Cooks hurt last year, and
Right.
I was looking to fade a lot of CD stuff, saying, well, they're going to double him and he's not going to get, and then he just kept going over and over and over and scoring touchdowns. So, yeah, I think as long as Prescott's healthy, CD Lamb is going to produce. And I'm not overly sold on the defense per se. So they could be trailing in some of these games, especially if the secondary is dinged up. Like, if they can't stop the run like they did last year, which was
Right.
horrible. And I think Diggs is going to probably miss the first month of the season, 2 months of the season.
Still unknown. But to your point, that is in flux. And so
Yeah, and then are they going to have a pass rush that can be disruptive? Is that defensive line going to be able to get pressure without having to blitz a lot? You're bringing in a third defensive coordinator in 3 years now, so
right.
things have changed. There's going to be a lot of growing pains there. I could see Dallas, and they're playing a lot of pretty pumped up offenses as well too. I could see Dallas playing from behind, having to pass a lot, and that means a lot of CD Lamb passes too. So.
Yeah,
So I think CD would be a player, at least in the Cowboys, that I think will have a big season as long as Dak is healthy.
that's a good 2-for-1 as well, because you can, really push on CD and fade. Even if they take a wide receiver in the first round, there will be a lot of, especially like right after the draft, there will be a lot of like, oh man, whatever, but it is the CD Lamb show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's not sharing
Right.
touches. Like he's 1 and 2 is like going to be way down here.
I mentioned I had some off the beaten path, if that was all right. Well, you're talking the day after the Florida Gators won the national championship. So my question is, what was your success throughout all of March Madness?
It was a mixed bag, I will say. It was a mixed bag. It was honestly, in terms of the sports betting side of things, it was like it was money in and money out for the most part. However, the Final Four did not go well for me. I had futures on Duke and Auburn, so I was like, I'm sitting pretty.
Yeah,
At least one of these teams is going to get. No, they did not.
Wow, tough Saturday night.
I had Duke winning all of my bracket, and then in terms of my bets, like Sweet 16 was iffy. Elite 8 was pretty good. Final Four was terrible in the national title game last night. The one bet I did have, and the one bet that I was kind of pushing out there as kind of the best bet, was the Crier over 2.5 3-pointers made.
Mm-hmm.
It was plus 110 when it opened. That was just an error. And all three of us that we were doing a college basketball show for Covers, like we just attacked that with abandon. So I had more money on that last night. That one cashed easily. It was like 2 minutes into the second half he hit that, but some of the other ones went a little sideways.
Yeah, I leaned into Crier and Walter Clayton Jr. on Monday night just because they've both been so hot, and Walter Clayton just got smothered, and so that was just a tough scene for me on Monday specifically.
Yeah, I should have came back and bet Florida live when they went down, because it was still very much of a game, and Florida and Houston had taken away Clayton.
Right.
And I was like, Florida's still in this, despite had you have said Walter Clayton's going to have 0 points at half, you would have been, so Houston's up by 20.
Yeah.
Up by 30.
And it just took the one run that he was not even run, just like the one baby run that he got was enough.
Yeah, you got the and one layup, another tough finish, which he did all tournament, and from there it snowballed, came down, hit another 3, and facilitated well. Condon played well. That's a guy that I was high on early in the tournament, and he kept burning me because he had a bum ankle. And I even said before this game, I was like, watch Condon come out and score like 17 points. And I'm pretty sure he scored 17 points.
Off the beaten path, number 2 of 3. I'm, hands up here, just kind of I watch the movies and the Disney Plus shows Marvel fan. Yep. You're obviously more serious than I am on this front. So
I have kids. Like I had a kid, like I have an older kid, and we've done like Iron Man 1 and we've done the whole MCU journey together.
That's very cool.
And he's at school, so a lot of these times I have to wait for him to get home so we can go see the movies. But we've seen like every single MCU movie in the theater together.
That's a great dad move, and very cool. So, but my question then is, obviously, so the MCU obviously means a lot to you emotionally, and we can all put that in its box. If you assess it though and evaluate it, are you confident in the return? There's a lot of people buying back in, saying, it's finally about to be fixed. Are you buying that?
I mean, the return of the Russos is pretty good. For the Avengers movies are just going to be fun. Like, I think they're going to be big and they're going to be fun. And I don't know. The expectations are getting, I will say it's getting with the TV shows and everything, the entanglement of stuff. Cause like my son doesn't get to watch all the TV shows, and we go and see a movie and he's like, who the hell's that? And I'm like, oh, that's this guy. And he did this and he was in that and that. I did enjoy the last Captain America movie. A lot of people were kind of pooing on that one. It was what I wanted to see. The Red Hulk went ape, and I thought Cap was awesome. And I'm a big Daredevil fan, like huge Daredevil fan. Like it's like Wolverine and Daredevil are my main guys, and love the new Daredevil series.
That's
fantastic. Awesome. I like the Earthbound stuff. I'm not big on the multiverse and things like that. I'm not too crazy on those sort of things. Keep it Earthbound. Keep it simple.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like the moment you start like traveling through time and space, it gets, I recently watched Interstellar for the first time ever. And it was a bit, whoa, this is, an intense thing.
Yeah.
But I think I've just sort of, I think we've all kind of accepted, like, if you put Marvel in the place it's supposed to be, you have to
Mm.
suspend some level of reality. Like,
Oh yeah.
my guy, the way you've got Wolverine and Daredevil is Spider-Man. That's a very common take. I
That
get that.
so my son is my youngest one. He's like Spider-Man through and through. And it's funny because it's one of these things where my wife and I, when he was like 3, we were like, oh, Spider-Man's the thing now. Like my older boy was big into Transformers, but it'll be something else. But like they just keep coming out with Spider-Man movies.
No, and like obviously No Way Home was super cool and nostalgic in a
Oh,
lot of ways, but like it hinges on this plot that's like, well, we didn't get into college. It's like, okay, well, if we can look past this, and just accept that all the cool stuff is happening, and
yeah.
this movie isn't up for an Oscar. You know what I mean?
I like no, but it's like it doesn't have to be. Like
Right.
it's like what's the God? There was the Godzilla movie that came out in like 2000. And people were like,
The one
this
with
is
Matthew Broderick.
yeah. People were like,
Right.
this is the worst thing ever. And it's like, what did you want? Like, I
Yeah.
paid my money. I want to see the giant lizard stomp
Yeah.
through the city and break stuff. And I'm happy. Like, as this is the expectations. It's not like going to McDonald's and being like, this
That's
burger is terrible. It's
Yeah,
like,
that's
yeah,
exactly.
it's a
That's a
McDonald's burger,
great
man.
way to put it. Okay, my last one.
All right.
I mentioned it already, but I love golf, and this is the best week of the year, obviously.
Mm.
Do you have any Masters suggestions for my Masters pool? I know I sprung that on you kind of last second, but
I
or
I
general intuition.
don't normally. Now I will say I used to. So we had a much smaller crew. So when I first was with Covers, I kind of had to do a little bit of everything, and I would bet the Masters. And normally I'll hit up a couple like odds makers around this time of year and be like, who should I be taking to at least
Right.
make the cut or finish top 20 or something like that. So I think I'll say strategy wise, look at those guys that can finish top 25, like those markets. If you are betting, and I know you can't in Texas, but anyone else who can legally bet out there, look at the top 20, top 15 markets, not necessarily taking a player to win because only one guy can finish first and win it all. But you can have 20 guys finish top 20. You can have, 15 guys finish top 15 type thing. Look at familiarity with the course. It's not like any other tournament. It's
Right.
different in a handicapping sense because like, the players or the British or whatever is going to move around to different courses, but it's always at Augusta. And there's a familiarity with a lot of players, especially some of the older guys like the Angel Cabreras and the Mickelsons and stuff like that. Like if you can find good value on them to make the cut, and then the bones are going to get sore on Saturday. They're not going to be there, especially if it's rainy and crappy. Like those guys are going to be like, all right, I made the cut and I made my money and my
Yeah.
sponsor was happy. And that's really what they're playing for. So like look for familiarity and don't get too greedy. Top 20s, top 30s, make the cut bets. I find that's where I get my best value.
I think that's good advice for me on Tuesday because I get lost in the underdog sauce of of just daily wagering. You know what I mean? And daily, like this guy, more or less than this amount of strokes. But I think the true money to be found is within the top 20s, the top 15s. Like it requires more patience.
Like, rather than taking a flyer. No, you can put yourself in a good hedge position. Like I've had that before where I've had a guy to win the tournament, and coming into Sunday, he's like top 5.
Right.
And so I can be like, okay, well, I can bet the live markets, which are great now. Like you can bet these golf tournaments live, hole to hole, and get some kind of buyback on the other side to protect yourself. But I tend to keep it simple. I'm not as much involved into the golf betting, and I'm a terrible golfer, so I have like no interest in it. My parents were big golfers, so I watched it all growing up, and I'll watch Sunday of Augusta, but that's about it for me as terms of golf goes.
Excellent. Well, Jason, this has been a lot of fun. And if anything, we learned the tip about the long, trips away from home. You know what I mean? And the first game back.
Put that in your back pocket. It is something, it's not something that analytics is going to equate for, but there are certain situations in which you have teams on extended road trips coming back home and the wife is calling and the buddies are calling, the agent, mom and dad need tickets.
Wow.
The
yard needs to be cut. Yeah.
They need, all this stuff going on.
Wow. That is amazing. Everybody check out Covers for the latest and greatest, obviously, in the world of betting news and analysis. And anything else you want to say before we leave forever, Jason?
Yeah, before we leave forever. I will be, I have a series every year that comes out in kind of mid-August, and I preview every team, but I preview them from a betting standpoint. So I'm going to give you a futures bet to make. I'm going to give you a player prop to make. I'm going to give you a lot of unique ways to chop this up. It's not going to be your standard team previews. It is very much a betting preview. So if you are starting to get into betting football, or if you like betting football, look out for those. Usually around mid-August, I can come back from vacation, and then I chain myself to my desk for the next few weeks of football prep.
Excellent. Well, we'll be on the lookout for that. We got, basically a whole sweltering heat of summer to go before we get there.
I'm in Canada, so I've got a little bit of rain and cloudiness until about June, and then it's beautiful.
For like 3 months. Yeah. Right on.
And then
Jason, thanks so much for hanging out. We'll see you next time.
all right. Thanks for having me on.